Welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers, a podcast for women of color and first gen who are breaking generational cycles and glass ceilings by going places no one before them has ever gone. I'm your host, leadership coach, and eldest daughter of immigrants, Mariela De La Mora. I left a 16-year marketing career to create a multiple six-figure-a-year coaching business as a single mom. Each week, you'll learn how to build unshakable self-trust, become in demand, lead with confidence, and make more money by being more of who you are. So you've probably heard me say before that the human aspect of business is the most complex part, that the doing is the easiest part. And that if growing a business or doing anything that scares you was as simple as somebody coming and telling you what to do, there would be a lot more people doing it. Like, you really have to think about how many people even put themselves on the line to create their own money. How many people aim for 6 figures, 7 figures, right? It's not very much. And if it were easier, more people would be doing it. Now, it's easy to say that, like, okay, yeah, like it's easier for some people because they already have money, or it's easier for some people because they have connections. Yes, absolutely. Entrepreneurship, like many things, thrives on privilege, and you have to have enough privilege in order for you to even attempt it in the first place, right? But the part that I want to share with you today comes from the real unglamorous identity shifts and the things that actually facilitate you being able to hold more. So if you've ever heard anybody say that, like, you had somebody give you $1 million tomorrow, let's say it was $1 million through your business, because then it's attached to you having to deliver something, right? If you had $1 million business tomorrow, you wouldn't know what to do with it. What I'm going to talk to you about in this episode is part of what is going to allow you to hold whatever that next goal is. So whether that's, like, I would say more so beyond like just your first client, because the thing is that what I'm going to talk about in this episode is more so full-time entrepreneur fears. I often will see this when someone is approaching 6 figures, at 6 figures. So really for me, it was what got me from 6 figures to a 150K a year to 300K years, right? And all of it for me was internal shifts. It was the things that I was the most scared to happen, the things that I was trying to prevent, all of those things that I had to actually work through. And on the other side of that came a version of me that is more grounded, less scared, less ashamed. And I needed to become her in order to hold the bigger business. So if you are in a stage of business right now where you are just like, oh my gosh, can this thing just happen for me? Whether maybe you're like, I just want to go full-time in my business so that I don't feel like I don't have to go to this job every day. I just hate my job. Or I'm in business full-time, but I feel so activated and triggered financially. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. Like, when can I just get to the point where this doesn't happen? Or I want to grow, but I've already had some client issues. And if I had twice as many clients, does that mean twice as many clients that I would have to serve and support and potentially let down? Like, there's so much about what it is that we're trying to create that simultaneously, we're also afraid of what will happen if we get it, but we're also afraid where we are, right? So this whole episode is about all of the unglamorous shifts that I went through to go from a 6-figure business to a multiple 6-figure business that eventually brought in $1 million lifetime, but that I've also coached on. So this isn't just my own experience. This is literally like, I've coached clients from the 6 to multiple 6-figure level and helped them get there. I've coached clients that are at the 7-figure level and experiencing these, like, they either have experienced these or now it's hitting them even harder because of all the responsibility that's behind the 7-figure business, right? And there's 6 main shifts that I'm going to talk to you about today. And I share this because sometimes we give so much power to, like, I just need to figure out the right way to do this. And we're looking for the answer in, like, a strategy. And there is, for sure, there are strategies at every level, but I would say it's more 80% identity of your being is actually what allows the 20% to reveal itself, or the 20% to be implemented to where you can actually hold it. Now, you think that it's backwards, but when you really look at what it takes to grow a business, you actually, even if you were to hire a strategist or consultant, all of this, like, there is insight that only you have. And you also have to be able to be okay in the meantime for you to be able to even have the business that's around in a few years versus pulling the plug on something too soon or prioritizing something that's short term because you're trying to get yourself out of discomfort. And so even if you had somebody telling you exactly what to do, and I think this is a misconception that like if you had somebody telling you exactly what to do, it would work if you had no thoughts about what to do. And if you had no thoughts about everything that would happen as a result. And also, if you already had the leadership skills, if you already had the discernment, if you already had the emotional intelligence, if you already had the wisdom and the experience that comes from failure. And so like the more I talk about this, like there really isn't a way around any of these things. And I'm sharing this with you because you will probably see that you're in one of these places. And the good news is if you are, and I say this in the nicest way possible, if you are the problem, you're also the solution. And I don't say you're a problem in terms of you're doing something wrong, but it means that you actually have a lot more control than you think that you do. But the focus might not be what you think it needs to be. You might be looking externally for answers in terms of guidance strategy, which you may very well need. I think we do need that. And it will also show you this is also what my inner growth is. Like, what's my growth this season? What's my growth in order for me to receive the next thing? And there's always growth for you. There's always growth for you. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about like how I realized that I needed this, that I needed something more than like somebody coming and telling me what to do, and how I tripled my business and maintained it consistently just honestly through these shifts. So I'm boiling it down to like, these are the things that I did. This allowed me to triple my revenue without changing my offers. It allowed me to raise my prices, to remain booked out months in advance, to even eventually double my prices and still stay booked out, eventually lead into having a mastermind that's a 5-figure investment, really mostly sell 5-figure offers, be a breadwinner, be a single mom, be the person that pays all the bills, and also be able to work through immense money scarcity, money triggers, me coming from a family of immigrants that was always worried about money, me coming from an actual circumstance of going through a divorce that I didn't expect while I was pregnant, having to spend all of my money in order to pay the rent on our flat after he moved out, and I couldn't afford it by myself, so my bank account was drained. And then I had to move out of London because I didn't want my child to be born there, and I had to move back to America with my cat, spend all my money, cash out my 401k, move in with my parents, get on food stamps, get on Medi-Cal, be broke. Ask my mom for the first time to help me pay my rent. So I'm telling you all of this to be like, I've been through some shit. I'm not just sitting here being like, you should just like work on your thoughts and all of that. Like, no, I have had to work through very deep triggers around abandonment, around money, around like regret and like me being mad at myself for, being on my own, almost like blaming myself. And my business is what brought it up. The most challenging in the short term for many years. It's the most challenging to our sense of safety, our identity, to our ego, to our inner child. But I firmly believe that there's a part of us, especially if you are a person of color, who chose entrepreneurship because you knew that it was a vehicle to help you break cycles, to help you heal, because it's such a mirror and it's a different mirror at different stages. I can absolutely say 1,000%, like I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't choose entrepreneurship. I wouldn't be as self-aware. I wouldn't love myself this much. I wouldn't have identified and broken the cycles that I have, that I even notice in my relationship with my daughter, that I notice in the way that I'm able to keep my history with her father to myself and have her be like unaffected by that. The way that I process things, I've never felt more in control and more safe, even though the circumstances around money and investing and sales being up and down and things going wrong in my business, for example, that I've dealt with in the last year, that a version of me 2 years ago would have absolutely like spun out, woken up every single day with crippling anxiety. And I had those days, right? But I now feel like I feel free. Like I feel, granted, it's still hard, but I definitely feel a level of freedom that isn't just restricted to my business. I feel a level of freedom knowing that I can handle anything. And that came through these challenges that I'm going to talk to you about today. So what happened, really where I kind of realized this. So this is the backstory of, this episode was in 2021. I was off the back of a 6-figure year. In 2020 was like my first full year of entrepreneurship and I made 6 figures. Then in 2021, I moved to Oregon, where the cost of living was lower and all the things, because I was just, getting my business off the ground. And then my sales dipped. Really had a really hard time because number one, I was away from my friends and family in Oregon where I didn't know anybody. So I felt lonely. I felt overstimulated by parenting. I didn't have a break from parenting ever. It was just me and my daughter. So the only time I had to really work on my business uninterrupted was the limited hours she was in daycare. And I just remember at the time thinking I had seen so many exaggerated examples of people hitting their seven-figure year, like in their second year or third year, that I just was like, wait a minute, like my income's actually going down. I never thought that would happen. I just assumed that like if you made a certain amount of money, like you're just supposed to make at least that amount of money, if not more. But no, that's not guaranteed. And it's always telling you something. It's always giving you information. But I wasn't able to read the information or even look at it neutrally because I was so triggered by my bank account going down, by my sales going down, that it reminded me of when I couldn't pay the rent in London, when my divorce was happening and I was pregnant and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So my body literally thought like, we are back there. And I couldn't hear myself. Like I just felt so crippling at the time and I felt so alone. And I just remember being like, oh my God, what if I can't pay the rent? Like my brain went to like, what if we're homeless? And what if I have to get a job? It's going to mean like, what's that going to look like that I have to get a job again? And I just had so much resistance. And it was basically like in my mind, like, no, I have to fix the sales problem and it has to come in this form. It has to come from my business. And like, why isn't this working for me? And everything that I realized and learned towards the end of that year is what I'm going to share with you today. And it came because I allowed myself to be seen in this. I joined a coaching space that supported me. I made friends that allowed me to be myself. I showed up and I cried every week on calls and was just like, here's where I'm at. And what wound up happening was that in the last 2 months of 2021, I made more money than in the first 10 months. In the first 10 months, I made 70K. In the last 2 months, I made 80K. 80K in 2 months. And I didn't change my offers, any of that, right? This was literally just releasing guilt, shame, pressure, all the things I'm going to share with you. So let's dive in, okay? Because I know that this was a big buildup. So there's a couple of things before I tell you the 6 shifts that I made internally. These were actually just decisions that I made. Number one, getting a therapist, right? So I cannot state enough. The more emotions are coming up in your business, especially if it's a cyclical emotion, like it's coming up a lot and it's a fear and it's coming up, you need a therapist. I had a somatic coach that I worked with at the time, a nervous system coach. But before that, I had a life coach. And then after that, I had a somatic therapist. And then I had a regular therapist. So I had all these different therapists. But I have succeeded the most when I've had a place to bring my heavy emotions and validate them and process them and make sense of them so that I didn't make my business responsible for my feelings, but I had a place for my feelings to go and validate where they came from so that I could attribute them to the source. So having a therapist, so important. For me personally, given my background and what I've been through, I used to joke, but very seriously, that like I scheduled crying into the calendar for years. It's not so much anymore, but for years, I sobbed like every week for years. This isn't to scare you. It's just to say you aren't just healing for your business, you're healing for yourself. So that's one thing. I hired a therapist. And then I changed my environment. So I'd say that like, even once you hit 6 figures, it's a lot harder for you to, and even before, I'd say even at 50K, it's harder for you to maintain that if you don't have people that you talk to on a regular basis who are also sitting in the same discomfort as you and going towards similar goals, because everything in your body is going to look around you for signs of safety. And if nobody else is walking towards what you perceive to be the fire, you'll be like, why the hell am I walking to the fire? Am I crazy? So like you need other people to be around you to signal safety to your body and also to just have connections and friendships that see the inner world, the deep inner world that is entrepreneurship. So I changed my environment. I joined a mastermind. And this is why in my mastermind reclamation, like this is a place that we hold so much space in coaching for the internal fears that come up around growth. So 2 decisions that I made was hiring a therapist and changing my environment. So important, right? So in terms of the 6 shifts, the first shift is I had to learn how to practice contentment and safety in the present moment, meaning how am I okay right now? How am I safe right now? Without anything changing, without another client. That is so hard to do. And sometimes you can only look at the present moment. Like you might be worried about the end of day. Let's say if you had a bill you couldn't pay at the end of the day, that would be so hard. But you're looking at the present moment and you're like, how am I safe? What options do I have? Like how am I okay in the present moment? You will never get where you want to be by hating where you are. You're also never going to get where you want to be by hating yourself and shaming yourself for not being or not having what you thought you should have by now, right? Living in the miracle of where you are is a practice. And sometimes all we can do is literally the present moment. It isn't even day by day. Sometimes it's moment by moment, right? Because otherwise we make our business responsible for escaping how we feel. And that is typically shame. We want to escape shame. So we're like, we feel rush, right? But when you've truly released shame, most of your business circumstances will feel like, I'd say 50% neutral, 60% neutral, like it starts to go up and then they feel more solvable. So that's what it actually allows you to do is releasing, practicing contentment in the present moment. It just allows you to like look at things in a more neutral way. Number 2 is befriend discomfort. So just welcome it. It's going to be there. It's going to be a passenger no matter what. If you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not growing, and slow the rush. So I think about the car and you running, like you're on the highway and you're driving that car hella fast. And it's because you have a passenger shame and you're just like, you just want to drop them off. And instead, what if they were going to be in that passenger seat the whole time? How would you drive differently? And that is hard because I think sometimes we see discomfort or fear or triggers as a sign of like actual physical danger versus like, what do we need in order to support ourselves when we feel this way? Like it actually is normal to feel that. It doesn't mean don't do anything about it, but like fear being there and being like, well, what happens if this? And like, is it supposed to feel this way? Yeah, it is. A lot of the times, like, yeah, it is. And it doesn't mean like, okay, so just suck it up. It just means sometimes the what needs support is you before the business. You'll support yourself so you can support the business. So this is like what I'll call identity and leadership, right? And things that I coach on. So to validate, like, yes, you have actually chosen a pretty difficult path. It depends who you talk to. Some people will be like, oh, it's so great. You get to just create content and whatever. Like, yes, if you feel 100% safe and you don't have any childhood trauma and like all the things, like, yeah, maybe that feels really fun. But like for many of us in entrepreneurship, we've actually chosen the hardest path. Own why you've done that and then choose it again. In some seasons, you might have to, do that daily, but you can't task your results with making you feel better, even when money is part of making you feel better. So, which leads me to other things that I'm going to talk about with regarding money. I've also asked the question, is there actually a problem to solve or just a feeling to feel? And maybe sometimes it's 70% the feeling to feel and 30% the problem, but the feeling is making the problem seem more imminent, more unsolvable, more unsafe, right? And problems, and I also would say too, I had to learn that like problems and desires are different things. So if someone has a goal and they haven't hit it, they might say that's the problem, but that's not the problem. The problem is whatever is happening that's between you and that goal. And sometimes it's normal that the goal hasn't happened, but like understanding what you're actually solving for, otherwise like you can't get there. So it's, for example, if you want to double your income, that's not the problem. So we really have to look at like, okay, what is it that we actually need? But you have to process your emotions before you can even think clearly, right? So this is like why, in order for us to befriend discomfort and slow the rush, we also have to sit with it and talk with it and know that it's coming up and that the fears are coming up and the beliefs are coming up, instead of trying to shut them down by achieving the result so that you don't feel the feeling. That's a lot of the times what we think is going to happen is like, if I just achieve the result, I won't have to feel the feeling. But in reality, you have to acknowledge that the feeling is coming up, why it's coming up, why it makes sense, why you're proud of yourself for working through it, how you're safe, like all of those things. So it's like, you can't shut down those parts of you. You have to sit with them and witness them, right? And sometimes we confuse like awareness with feeling like, oh, I know where this is coming from. It's coming from this in my childhood, but like, are you feeling it? Like let yourself feel it and normalize why it's there and then why you're safe. And just notice that over time, like that feeling it won't be as activated, but you have to befriend the discomfort and expect it to be there versus seeing it as a sign that something's wrong, that you need to change something, because the discomfort is going to be there no matter what, especially when you are being stretched. So that's what I would say. And I would say even in terms of like the rush that we feel in entrepreneurship, the more we prepare ourselves for something to take 3 times longer than we think, the less likely we are going to run a marathon like a sprint. So imagine if you were running a marathon, but you didn't know it was going to be a marathon and you were surprised and you thought it was going to be like a 5K and you ran out of breath. That's what happens in business sometimes, is like we go into it like I did at the beginning, being like, yeah, maybe year 2 or 3 will be my second 7-figure year. And then I had a 6-figure year and then my income dipped and I was like, whoa, wait, this isn't what I signed up for. And I think sometimes we under-resource ourselves going into business. Like we quit our jobs too soon. We don't have enough, in savings. We just expect it to happen faster. And so I'm like, prepare yourself for it to take 3 times longer than you think. Ironically, when you do that, it often takes less time because you're able to come to the table with a clearer mind. So prepare yourself for it to take 3 times longer. And I also want to say too that the upside of entrepreneurship is always worth it. Like that's just a belief that I have, even though like I know that I've achieved exceptional results and I've made $1 million, cumulatively and statistically, like I'm way up there in terms of like Latina owned businesses who average making $40K a year, solopreneur businesses, right? And even in that exceptionalness, if that's even a word, I'm willing for it to take as long as it takes. And I'm in my 40s, you guys. Like I have every reason, and I have a child and I'm her only provider. I have every reason to be like, I need to rush. But there's a part of me that's like, I know that I am solving multi-million-dollar problems. I know that everything that I'm going through right now and every year, how I'm faced with new challenges and new problems, I get to solve these problems so that I can be someone who doesn't ever have to worry about money, who creates more wealth in the last, decades of my life, that my daughter doesn't have to worry about it, that I feel free. And I already have that and I'm already living in the miracle of it. But I just have the belief that the upside of entrepreneurship is always worth it. And it's worth every year that it takes figuring it out. Because if you've ever heard the saying of entrepreneurship is you willing to do things that most people won't so that you can live in a way that most people can't, that's actually entrepreneurship, because we could exit that at any point by escaping the financial risk, the emotional turmoil, all of the decision making, like all of the things, all the risk in order to go and do something else. But we keep choosing it, for a reason. So part of releasing rush is like, if you knew that you were running a marathon and you were just prepared for it to take longer, how might you resource yourself? How might you shift your expectations? This doesn't mean don't try harder, but it means like give yourself a little bit of a net so that you can approach it and give it the attention and give yourself the support that you need. Number 3 is be willing to get money safety outside of the business. When people either don't have it, so this is like when I disagree when people are like, quit your job and don't have a plan B. I had savings. I was willing to get a job. I wasn't like my first year and a half, but I had to be willing to get a job. I had to be willing to be like, if I had to temporarily pull from like my investment accounts at the time, it was 401k, I would. You have to be willing to get money safety outside the business, whether it's a job, a gig, a contract, something, because if you're not, then you have to be willing to accept what comes with needing the income that you're also trying to problem solve for. And it is possible, but it requires like so much maturity. It requires so much of like an elevated level of thinking. And it's really hard to do that because you're trying to problem solve a thing that you also need. And it's just really difficult. Like I've seen it, and I think different people have different thresholds, but typically the folks who have a little bit of a safety net somewhere built in there are knowing that their business doesn't have to be their sole provider. They have other things they could do if they needed to. Helps the person ironically grow faster and just enjoy the ride a lot more. So be willing to get money safety outside the business. So if you have a spouse who is supportive, if you have a part-time job, if you have savings and you're just like, you know what, it's fine. Like I'm an angel investor in myself and you have that, then that's great. But for anybody else who doesn't and you have no backups and your business is your only source of income and you're not willing to get a job and you're not willing to put, let's say borrow money and you're not willing to touch your savings and things like that's when it gets really hard, because we do have to fund the business in different ways and just you have to be able to choose other ways that you are financially safe. Number 4, forgive yourself and release shame. So you might be like, what do you mean forgive yourself? Like forgive yourself for what? But one thing that I've noticed and I've personally experienced is that when you are sitting in the discomfort of business, you're holding stuff against yourself now from the past and you're making your business responsible for it. Like, so for example, like I had to forgive myself for my divorces and how I had this thought that like I could have been better off financially. So now I need to make up for lost time. So I was putting the pressure on my business for quote unquote making up for lost time. I also had to forgive myself and release shame around feeling like I made bad choices. And because I made bad choices in marriages, then I'm going to make bad choices in business. And like, you would think, but sometimes it's like, you're just mad at something, someone, or yourself, and you're asking your business to help you get out of it with the goal that you're trying to achieve. So notice that. And just what past version of yourself do you need to forgive? What shame are you holding on to that you're asking your business to wipe the slate clean and you're hinging it off of you hitting this goal? So number 4, forgive yourself and release shame. Number 5, I really had to look at where am I giving power to circumstances, like the number in my bank account, sales, like followers, any of that. Where am I giving power to things that are outside of my control versus the things I can control? So I would call this like personal power over circumstantial power, right? So at the end of the day, the only thing that you have control over is, that's the only thing that matters. And I think I had to notice too, and sometimes I have to do this with my clients, like noticing the difference between validating yourself and victimhood. And so what I would say is that when you're validating yourself, you are like, yes, this is hard. And what do I want to do about it? Versus victimhood is like, this is just the way that it is. And it generally will be something along the lines of like, I can't, I don't have, or I need. Like that's just, it's power. It's like you're giving away your power to a situation. And we've all been here to a degree. So again, no shame, but noticing on like, what do you have control over? So number 5 is like, what's in your personal power versus where you sitting in circumstantial power and giving it away to a circumstance. So I'll give you another example of what this looked like for me. At the time in 2021, where I'm telling you the story where I like made more money in the last 2 months of the year, I had the belief that my life is so much harder and expensive because I'm a single mom, right? So I had this thought. Now, 2 ways you could go with that thought is I could validate it and say, yes, being a single mom is hard. How can I work with it? Victim would be, I can't make the money I want to because I'm a single mom. And I did have that belief, to keep it real, right? So validation is like, yes, this is hard. How do we want to proceed? What do I need? And victim is I can't have, I won't do, like all these things. Like you're just deciding the outcome. So personal power over circumstantial power. What do I have power over and where am I possibly falling into victimhood, which means you've already decided that you can't have something versus looking at what you do have control over. And then number 6, I'm going to repeat the number 1 through 5. Number 1 is practice contentment and safety in the present moment. How are you okay and safe in the present moment? Number 2 is befriend the discomfort and slow the rush, even if it's just a little bit. Number 3, be willing to get money safety outside of your business revenue. Number 4, forgive yourself. Where do you need to forgive yourself? And release shame. So this could be past versions of yourself, present versions of yourself, and where are you holding shame that you are attaching to your next milestone? Number 5, personal power over circumstantial power. Where are you sitting in victimhood? Where do you actually have more power than you think that you have? And anything that feels hard, validate it. Validate, yes, this feels hard. And I'm proud of myself. And what do I want to do as a result? Do I need to proceed differently? Do I have some needs like personal power over circumstantial power? And then number 6, one thing that I had to do and one thing that I coach many of my clients on, because many of my clients in reclamation have been in business for like 5 years or more. And I use this analogy all the time. the honeymoon phase versus like long-term relationship and 5 years in marriage, right? That it's not going to feel the same. So number 6 is choose your business again and again, right? You're going to have to choose your business again and again. Every time you choose it again, you might have to be like, I don't have to do this. Do I want to not do this? I don't have to do this. So like, why do I want to do it in this season? And be willing to ask yourself that question and have the answer be different in every season. Like, I don't think it's wrong or bad or anything against anybody who like decided not to have a business anymore. I think sometimes you just make a different choice. But in many cases, it's just that we weren't properly set up or supported in order to work through the challenges of entrepreneurship. So what I mean by choosing your business again and again is that whether you chose entrepreneurship because you couldn't survive financially on the pay from your job, some people did choose it for that reason. They're like, I literally cannot survive on $2,500 a month. Like, this is no way. Or if you chose it because you wanted to do something that you love, I have to remind myself all the time, like, nobody makes us do this. We choose to do this, and we can choose not to do this at any time. And this isn't to be dismissive. It's just to bring the power back to ourselves to be like, why do you choose it? Why do you choose this discomfort? Why do you choose it for yourself? And why do you choose it for your clients? I asked a client this morning, and she said that for herself, it was flexibility and freedom and being able to like be with her daughter and drop her off at school. And then the reason for her clients was that she didn't want them to go through what she went through, right? So like, why are you choosing this version of hard? Because there's a version of hard for everything. So choose your business again and again, and you may have a different answer in every season, right? And again, we're choosing a version of hard for several years that most people won't in order to have what most people can't. So sometimes I try to catch myself even when I say I have to, and I'm like, I get to. Like, I get to sit in the discomfort of this. I get to solve this problem. I get to stretch my capacity for financial scarcity. I get to stretch my capacity for receiving over 6 figures in a month, which I've also received, right? I've had 0 months and I've had $176,000 months. Like, I've had so much in between. I get to be this person. So that's shifting the perspective. And I will say too, in terms of choosing your business again and again and allowing yourself to have different reasons, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you doing it for yourself? Why are you doing it for your clients? This is my belief that in the context of a lifetime, your upside in entrepreneurship is far greater than in anything else. And it is worth you preparing yourself for a full marathon in order to get yourself to that place. It is worth preparing yourself for a full marathon, not a 10K, not a sprint, right? And you have chosen an exceptional path. You've chosen something that is exceptionally challenging, but also exceptionally rewarding, exceptionally triggering, and exceptionally expansive. We have chosen to be unrecognizable, honestly, like every other year or so. When you think about people who met you a few years ago, I'm like, you don't even know me. You got to get to know me now, because we go through so much and we stretch ourselves more than the average human being. And that deserves the consideration and like validation and respect. But it also we need to look at it and be like, it can't possibly just be the doing. Like, you are being stretched in every way possible. But this is why we do it. And I just fully believe in the context of a lifetime, the upside is far greater. And I have this belief as a single mother in her 40s who has every reason to be in a rush. And granted, yes, of course I want more, but that if I can sit in this and say like, I have time, I fully believe and know that I'm going to have multi-million-dollar years. That's why I'm like, you know what? I need to make sure my business is profitable and that I can pay my team and I can pay for mentorship and I can pay my bills and, all the things I want to be able to, depending on the season, keep putting money into my investment accounts and all the things. But even as me, as a single mother, eldest daughter who came from money scarcity and who came from poverty in her 40s, entrepreneurship, I know, is so illogical that I know one day I'm going to be telling stories of like, okay, and then I had a 6-figure year and then multiple 6-figure, then I had a really hard time and then I bounced back and then I did this and now the business is doing 8 million a year. Like it absolutely is heading in that direction, right? And that's possible for all of us if we stay in the game. I just want you to stay in the game, and I want you to know what it means to stay in the game. And what this episode was about was all of the things that allow us to stay in the game as a marathon, not a sprint. So I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear what resonated with you. DM me on Instagram. I love receiving messages. Share the episode, share the parts that stood out to you. Share it with a friend. If you heard this and you know somebody needs to hear it, forward it to them, forward the episode. I really am just here to share all of the things that not everyone will, because I know that it keeps more marginalized people in the game of entrepreneurship and more money in our hands. And I want that. And that's what I do. That's what my work is dedicated to as a leadership and business coach who primarily serves women of color and daughters of immigrants. If this resonated with you, there are 2 ways to work with me. One is to get yourself on the wait list for Reclamation Mastermind. We open the doors at the beginning of October. And that is a mastermind for anyone who already has a validated offer. You've already been making money. You already have client results, and you are looking to get booked out, remain booked out, or scale through thought leadership and just through the skill of leadership itself. So my clients in Reclamation are really there to become someone who has unshakable self-trust, who knows themselves, and to build a brand that's bigger than just their platforms, to be able to have speaking engagements, third-party credibility, and a brand that allows them to have a very full life and not center their business around their whole life. So that is Reclamation Mastermind. And the other is private coaching. So we either can work together for 6 months, which is typically how I work with clients, and we meet bi-weekly. Or there's also an option to work with me on Telegram month to month, where we set a goal for the month and then I support you through it. I help with like reviews and things. And typically this is something where it's like, I'm helping you through a difficult chapter in your life or a pivot. We're looking at your messaging. We're getting clear on your thought leadership angles. We're helping you to get on other people's platforms who are aligned, right? All of those things. So if you have like a narrow focus and you want to just see what it's like to work with me, you can work with me for $700 a month Telegram month-to-month coaching. That is not available on my website. You would have to send me a DM on Instagram, but I can send you more information. I love working with clients that way. So that is something where if you're not sure you want to jump into Reclamation or jump into private coaching, Telegram coaching is a great way for us to kind of get acquainted, for me to support you, and then for you to decide what you need from there. All right. Thank you so much for being with me. I bared my soul in this episode, as I usually do, but all in service of what I wish I knew sooner. All right. I'll see y'all in the next episode.